Facebook, and hello everybody who came, all three of you. So I have quite a few things to talk about tonight. I want to do it in as easy of a manner as possible, but get as much information out as I possibly can. Is that working?
Yes,
cool.
It is.
Okay. So I want to talk first about kind of how your dog's brain works, because that, I think, is one of the more important things that I wish I had known, because in the beginning you really just have no idea sort of what's going on inside of their heads. So the way that your dog's brain works is not the same as ours. They are still animals. It still works somewhat similarly, but overall the way that it works is that your dog doesn't know right or wrong. They don't know good or bad. They don't have any revenge feelings. They don't think about the future. They just think about what's going to get them a reward and what doesn't get them a reward, and what is safe and what is dangerous. And it's all sort of boiled down into those really clear categories. And if you start to think like this, the way that your dog thinks, then you can sort of understand a little bit better where they're coming from when they present some of their behaviors. So chewing, house soiling, barking, jumping, chasing, these are all self-rewarding behaviors, so the reward is the behavior itself. So these things can be a little bit harder to deal with, but overall we can kind of convince them that something is good or not. And so we do this through communicating with them. So the term positive reinforcement comes from a psychology term, or a psychological sort of state of operant conditioning. It's not super important to know all about operant conditioning. What is important to know is that that term is from there. It's not just a dog training term, it's a psychological term. But positive reinforcement is one of the quadrants of 4 in operant conditioning, but it's the most important one. And so what positive reinforcement refers to is we're reinforcing a behavior in a positive way. And it doesn't mean positive as in happy, it means positive as in we are adding something to that state, basically, in order to increase the likelihood of the behavior. So we add something good that the dog or that the person deems positive, and that will increase the likelihood of it happening again. So generally in dog training we see this as food reward. You do something we like, you get a food reward. We're positively adding something to that situation, reinforcing it's something good, and so they start to seek it out again. We have volume issues?
No, just
cool.
People writing in.
Oh,
Hi, Gina.
Awesome. So one of the other terms that we hear a lot is positive punishment. And positive punishment is the one that we try to avoid, because it basically suppresses behavior, it can hurt the dog's psyche, and it can be really damaging. So positive punishment is something like if you hit your dog, or if you're jerking on a collar or something, it's introducing something into that state that is negative to the dog. And so that's why, even though it sounds positive, it's not. It's introducing, it's punishment. So we don't do that. So operant conditioning, the other 2 quadrants are really confusing, and I don't want to talk about them. The other conditioning that we use is classical conditioning. And so operant conditioning generally leads to classical conditioning. And so what classical conditioning is classical conditioning is like if you hear a song that doesn't have anything to do with a mood. So say it's just a sad classical song, but it makes you happy because something happy happened to you when you heard this song. You have an attachment to it, and especially if it happens more often. So like, think about the house that you grew up in. If you have a positive association with that, if you liked that place, you're going to be more likely to think of that in a more positive light. So you're going to see that home and be reminded of things that make you feel happy. And so we're using positive reinforcement to reinforce that happy feeling until that sort of happy feeling is the thing that they're looking for. It's not just reward, it is also kind of transferring the value of the food or the reinforcement that we give onto the stimulus itself. So like us saying sit, like us saying come. Dogs have a pretty good association with their food bowls usually because food comes from there and it's always good. So rewards can vary from dog to dog. Generally, food is a really good reward. They have to eat. A lot of dogs enjoy eating. That's not to say that every dog enjoys it. They can also be motivated by play. They can also be motivated by attention and engagement with you. They have different drives, which I'll talk about, but overall, these are usually the motivators that dogs are working for and will work for if they're given the opportunity. If anybody has a question, you can just shout out.
Oh, no questions
okay,
yet.
cool.
No major questions.
Right.
I'll let you know.
So most things, especially when we're talking about puppies, are somewhat neutral to a puppy to begin with. So they don't really have a association with it yet. So we can kind of convince them that it is good or bad. It's kind of like having a best friend who's really gullible. Like we're saying, oh, this is a good thing. Oh, this is what you wanted. They don't know right offhand. We can sort of tell them as long as it doesn't involve pain. Pain is something that is always bad, and it's sort of an evolutionary thing that if something hurts, there's probably a reason why. It's going to damage your body and damage the way that you're interacting, and so you were evolutionary predisposed to avoid pain. And so we can't convince a dog that something painful is good, but we can convince them that something that may not be comfortable to begin with is. But we'll get into that later. So some dogs are more responsive to things, and some dogs are a little bit less responsive to things. It kind of depends on the dog, and it kind of also depends on their level of socialization, which I want to talk about right now. This is my notebook, because my brain is not organized. Yeah. So I'm not a vet, so I can't answer to some medical questions and some of the medical sort of part of this, but I can say that with puppies, 8 to 14 weeks is the primary time for socialization. Most of the things that they are exposed to at this point in their life, they're going to carry over for the rest of their lives. It's going to affect them for the rest of their life. And so, hey girl, come here, come back. See you. And so we want to expose them to as much as possible. This is where they're learning their environment. This is where they're learning what is in their environment, what to expect in their future life. The problem is, if this was a smaller world and we kind of hung out, if it was going to be a farm dog and we're hanging out on the farm the whole time, then they're going to get used to pretty much everything that's going to be happening on the farm. But we're mobile, we travel, and so we want to expose our dogs to as many things as possible so that later on in life they don't see a 16-wheeler for the first time and have to decide what to do then. Because they have that 8 to 14 weeks, and then right after that, they have something called a fear period. And so in the fear period, they're more susceptible to be afraid of things. This is after they've sort of learned to kind of be happy-go-lucky and explore things on their own. Now they're entering that time where they have to see that some things can hurt them. And we don't want to show them that everything hurts them, but we do want them to only have fear reactions to appropriate things. We don't want them to be afraid of coffee tables or pictures that fell off of a wall and then they're afraid of that part of a wall. We want to make sure we're there with them to support them through this period, so we can say it's okay, or we can say, we'll avoid that in the future because that is something that's scary. We don't encourage them to be afraid of things, but there are things that they should be afraid of. We just don't want to show them. So
during this period, we can also teach them to be more accustomed to things that dogs are typically afraid of, right?
Yes.
Vet's office, groomers.
Absolutely right. Yes. So we can desensitize some of the fear, some of the discomfort that they have, especially during socialization, handling things like vet offices. Dogs aren't predisposed to disliking the vet. It's the experiences that they have at a place that makes them dislike it. Your dog isn't born and goes, my name is Pillow and I hate vets. Like, they don't know that. They don't know that yet. Yeah. And so they have an experience and they decide that the vet is a bad thing. They make that association on their own, or a good thing. My dogs pull to get into the vet because they just get bunches of treats shoved in their face and they get to meet a whole bunch of new people and it smells like dogs. It's a great place.
Yeah. But
it can vary from dog to dog, and so we can sort of shape them. Again, it's your gullible best friend. Hey, this place is great. I just shove food in your face the whole time. Okay, I get poked a little bit, but cool, I get food. It's great. Yeah. So, good question. After socialization, after a fear period, basically all new stimulus are going to be either fight or flight, because this is how sort of animals exist in a state. And there is a little bit of curiosity, especially among more confident dogs. So they may, say, I'm going to decide to fight or flight after I explore it a little bit. But some dogs will just see something, hear something for the first time after the socialization period, go, I don't know what that is, and just bolt and just hate it. Or, I don't know what it is, jump on it, try to mess with it. So we can counter condition, we can change their experience that they've had with this thing, or we can sort of make things worth it. So we can say, this doesn't have to be something that you love, but it is something that you kind of have to live with because of where we live and where they live. It is something that maybe they have to get used to, but we can make that as painless as possible. Cool. Any questions? Everybody good? Cool.
Thanks.
Finnegan, you have any questions? No. Hager, you're good? You just got food. Good. All right. So, play, energy, and food. You gotta feed your dog because you own them. You gotta feed them, but you don't have to do it for free. So what we have in basically bowls have led us to do this, but what we have is we have kind of like jobless dogs. So they just kind of live off of the pay that we give them, the pay, which is their food every day. We don't pay them, we don't give them anything else other than intention, engagement, and food. These are their motivators. So we make them work for it. We're not gonna make them work super hard, but nothing is free. They have these instincts in them. They want to work for their food, and they will work for their food if you ask them to work for their food. But if you don't ask them to do it, if you just say, hey Andre, can you sit on this couch and I'll give you $100 at the beginning of the day and $100 at the end of the day, I'm gonna say, great, that sounds like an awesome job. Not that I don't like my job.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, no problem. So what we can do to make them work for their food is we can use enrichment, and that's just things that are structured specifically to make them be rewarded with their food in easier ways. But we can tap into some of their innate instincts that they have kind of left over from when they did used to be wolves. So things like a Kong that has some frozen food in it, that's great. A treat dispenser, so they have to kind of knock the dispenser around, they have to interact with it, it's not just the food is just sitting there. That's awesome. Training is a great way to feed your dog, and it's an easy way to just load them up with treats. Like Hager here, he's just getting treats for just sitting there, which is great. It's not hard, he just gets food for doing nothing, which is awesome. He's actually doing something, I guess. And then for engaged play, so something like tug or a flirt pole, which I have and I'll talk about a little bit later. Dogs also have drives, so they have specific drives that are specific towards kind of like leftover behaviors from way back when. So we have a food drive. We're interested in food because we survive on it, and it's tasty, so that's a great way to tap into that. They have prey or play drive, which are both really, really closely related. A lot of the behaviors that you see in play, like chase or like tackle, or you'll see a dog shake their head, or you'll see a dog pull the stuffing out of a toy, that's left over from when these dogs were carnivores and they had to hunt their own food. So these are behaviors that sort of exist still within them. Sex drive is definitely one. It's not one that comes up as much unless you have an intact animal, but it does come up. And then social drive, interacting with us, engaging, interacting with each other. These are all things that can drive a dog. And some dogs will have a stronger food drive. Some dogs will have a stronger prey drive or play drive. You've seen a dog completely ignore food and not be able to fixate off of a ball. That's a really high play drive, or a prey drive, because they want to chase it, they want to grab it, and they want to kill it, basically. So we can design games for enrichment that tap into these specific behaviors. So like a prey drive or a play drive, give them something to chase and kill. So fetch is really great, or fetch with a toy that they can then shake at the end is even better. Find the food drive, make them work for their food. So food, if it rarely came free, put it in a Kong, put it in somewhere, wrap it in like a sacrificable towel so they can rip it apart and then pull food out, so they can have that satisfying urge that they want to rip those toys apart. We can give them something that we want them to rip apart. And then social drive, engage play with you playing tug, you playing with a flirt pole, and training or playing with other dogs. Put them in a situation where they can play with other dogs. If they're giving you that energy, if they're showing you they have that play energy, then give them an outlet for that energy. And then sex drive is much less common. It's probably not something that you can help your dog with. So dogs will show you what kind of play they're looking for. So if they're offering an engaging play, you don't want to say throw a ball. They may not be interested. If you've ever thrown a ball for your dog and then they ignore it, but they do bring a tug toy up to you, they're looking for that specific kind of play. They have that specific kind of energy, and so they want to get it out in that way. So give them what they're looking for but make them work for it. So if a dog's chasing your feet, give them something like the flirt pole to chase, so they can chase something across the ground that is appropriate and reward that. Do you need a hand?
It's okay.
Okay, are you sure?
Does it do this?
Not very well.
That's okay. Don't even worry about it.
Okay.
They said the video was sideways. I was like, ah.
Whoops.
Whoopsie.
We can turn it back to the other way.
Oh, I wonder if this works. Hey guys, does this work?
I think you're putting it on yourself.
Oh, turned it the wrong way.
Yeah, we have to put it like this, I think, like sideways.
You should have a blooper reel.
Yeah, that's how we started.
Right. So I think it's going to be upside down.
Yeah, the other way. Yeah, the camera was up top. There you go.
Can't turn it. There we go. Is that sideways, guys? I don't know. No one's answering.
Okay. All right.
It's all good.
Maybe they're all standing on their heads right now. So.
Yeah.
So say a dog is chewing on the furniture. You wouldn't play fetch with a ball that's chewing on the furniture. They have that chew energy. They want to get that chewing energy out. And so give them something to chew, appropriate to chew, that they can work with. And then, no go?
No go. Thanks, guys.
Oh, that might not be a bad idea to look at it on your phone.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, tap into the energy that they're presenting. If they're saying, I have this energy, make them use up that energy. Because if we use up all the other energy, they're not worried about that. They're not in play mode, they're not in chase mode, but they are in chew mode. So give them something to chew, because that's what they want to do. And then they're going to go, oh, this is great, thank you so much. And it won't be your furniture, it'll be something you chose, which is great. So problem behaviors and some management of those. Self-reinforcing behaviors are usually the problem behaviors that we have. So they end up doing things that we don't want them to do. Now, again, in the dog's mind, safe or unsafe, reward or no reward. They don't see these as problems, we see these as problems, which is fine. I don't want my dog chewing on my feet or chewing on the furniture or, jumping on my grandmother, but they get a reward out of it. They find it rewarding, otherwise they wouldn't do it. So we have to ask them to do something different. So so these are self-reinforcing behaviors. Things like counter surfing, chasing a cat, jumping, barking out the windows. These are all hard behaviors to work against because it's self-reinforcing. They bark out the window, that's the reward. They get what they wanted. They chase the cat, they get to chase. They counter surf, maybe they get a piece of chicken off of the counter, something like that. There is reward in that, and so they don't see anything wrong with that. There's nothing dangerous about it, other than your reaction, but hopefully not. And then they continue to do it. They would do it next time to make sure there isn't a piece of chicken up there, or chase the cat because it was fun. So what we can do is we can manage them in these cases. So we can manage that they are not able to do these things to self-reinforce on their own. Management usually involves a lot of baby gates, it involves leashes, it involves crates, paying attention, making sure, put a bell on the dog. Make sure that if you can't hear the bell, they're probably doing something wrong. Or give them something loud to do. And that way, if you don't hear that, you go, oh no, the puppy's doing something. And you gotta go find the puppy. But keep your eye on the puppy, because if they are in a situation where they can make the sort of right or wrong decision by our terms, they're gonna make whatever decision rewards them, which can be the right or wrong decision very easily. So something like moving things back on the counter. The behavior itself is still being presented. If they jump on the counter, they're still jumping on the counter, which we don't want, but they're not being rewarded for it. So it's not better than not being on the counter. But if they get something off, then it is better. And so it's reinforced. So at least we're stopping them from reinforcing. Baby gates, keeping cats in a place where they can escape, so letting the cat jump. The chasing will still be rewarding, but catching or playing with the cat after may not be, or worse, but hopefully not. Not getting attention from jumping. So if they're jumping up on you and they're looking for attention, if you don't give them the attention they're looking for, then they have no reason to do it. Unreinforced behavior has no reason to exist, and it goes away. There are some exceptions to this, but for the most part, there's no reason for things that are unreinforced. There's no reason for anything that isn't getting a reward to be in existence. And we can also give them, in these cases, we can manage so that they're not jumping up on the counter. And then when they either, before they decide, or after they have come off the counter, we can show them that the reward is down on the floor where we do want them to. So they're jumping up, they're not getting a reward, they're down on the floor, they do get a reward, they will seek the reward. And so they will look for what gets them the reward. And in the case of the cat, we just have to give them a higher reward, or curb that play drive into a game of flirt pull or chase or something that taps into that energy in an acceptable way. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
That's nice.
I'm kind of rambling, so I apologize. I think it's being awesome.
Yeah, I know. He's relaxing.
Adorable. Oh, Hager.
Hager's like, that puppy.
I haven't got food in a while. So there are problem behaviors that are presented from fear as well, which does come up. Come here. Good job. These are better worked with a professional. I couldn't give much advice on this in this setting, but I would say that it's usually you have to take small steps towards moving your dog being comfortable in a situation. You have to show them that not necessarily that their fear is unwarranted, but that in a case that it is a safe thing where the fear is not necessary, and we can help counter that feeling of fear towards reward. So a good example is sewer grates, especially the ones that you can kind of see through. Dogs don't like those. Their feet fall through. They make weird noises underneath. They're not really sure what they are. They can't really contextualize what it is. If we show them that they don't have to be afraid and pull away and go way around them, but we're not going to make them go on the sewer grate, but we can reward for walking near it, then that's enough. But we would take small steps towards that, work within their comfort level. We'd never want to push a dog too far in that situation, because they'll start to pull back and they'll start to be more afraid. But that's a hard example and not always the case with some. And then I said before, but there are some situations that dogs may never be comfortable in. One of my dogs really doesn't like when big trucks pass by. I don't need him to be super comfortable with big trucks passing by, but I don't want him to be very afraid of big trucks passing by, and I don't want him to have to pull away and kind of pull way off the road to do that. I just want him to be able to be comfortable and not feel stressed out in that situation. So aggression is something that is worth talking about. It does come up, but there are hardly ever any truly aggressive dogs. There are some out there, but I was talking with a vet who had been practicing for 15 years, and she said she had maybe met one or two truly aggressive dogs, and this is in and out of animal shelters and things as well. But what you do get is a lot of either resource-based aggression or fear-based aggression. And so fear is pretty common. If you're afraid and you're saying stop, if you're a dog and you're afraid and you're saying stop, and then it keeps happening, then they have no choice but to turn and try to protect themselves. It's fight or flight. And then resource, if a resource is going to be taken from you, you have to protect that resource. And our dogs, for the most part, don't have to protect resources. We give them food in a bowl or we give it to them in abundance, then it is lucky that they have that. But still, some dogs have that inherent trait of saying, this is mine, please leave it alone. So if you feel in a situation with a dog uncomfortable, chances are you're right. So we have a really, really strong bond with dogs, and we've been with dogs for so long that we kind of pick up on a lot of their behaviors, and our minds may say, I'm uncomfortable, or I don't feel comfortable in this situation, but you don't know why. It's basically your subconscious mind picking up on these signals that your conscious mind is not registering, but they're saying, this is a problem, back off, this dog doesn't want to be pursued, or in this situation. The exception to this is that if you have had a previous traumatic experience with a dog. I've been bitten by dogs before. I know people who have been bitten by dogs before, and they can become afraid of dogs, and that's completely understandable. But these instincts in that case may be thrown off a little bit by those negative experiences. So sometimes a growl or sometimes a facial feature switch or body language may seem different to you because of that experience, and that's completely understandable in those situations. So the other thing is that dogs may pick up on you being nervous about this. So if you are nervous, I'm good.
I'm good. Thanks. Thank you.
If dogs are picking up on you being nervous, they are going to see your nervous behavior and go, why are you being nervous? You're making me nervous. And so this can sort of feed off of each other in a bad way. And then also dogs could have previous experiences, traumatic experiences. If someone wearing a hat was always mean to them, or if somebody wearing a hat always stepped on them, chances are that dog's going to see somebody in a hat and go, I remember, unsafe, I don't like that, please go away. Thank you. Good boy. Right. How are we doing? Pretty good. How long have I been talking? 20 minutes? Okay. So, dog-to-dog play. I don't want to go too much into this because I want to do a dog park and a play workshop actually here, and I'll announce on the Facebook and through email and things when this is happening, because this is a really important thing, but it's really hard to explain. It's much better to see it with your own eyes and start to recognize it, and especially hear it. But there are a few things that you can look for, or a few things that you should know. Dog-to-dog play can look very scary. It can sound very scary. They do this, and that's okay. Not every time it sounds scary or every time it looks scary is it, that's fine.
Sorry.
Is it aggressive, but a lot of times dogs will work things out together, and they are going to kind of sound like they're killing each other, but they're probably fine. It doesn't mean every time, and certainly do not take this to mean I'm saying like just ignore it, they'll figure it out. But a lot of times we're more sensitive to this than they are. They may sound like they're going crazy, but they're fine. So there are a few different kinds of play. Just a few of them, or the ones that kind of nailed off the top of my head here, are wrestling, chase, toy, and stalking. You'll see a lot of these behaviors out of dogs when they're playing. You'll see dogs that are crouched down and stalk, or you see dogs that will search toys out specifically, or that really like to wrestle, or that really like to chase, or be chased. But they will match well with other dogs of their type, or some of these play styles match better with others. Somebody that likes to be chased and somebody that likes to wrestle may not be a very good thing. If they like to be chased and that's what they're about, then the dog catches them and starts to wrestle with them, they may not like that. But two dogs that like to wrestle, great playmates. One dog that likes to chase and a dog that likes to be chased, great playmates. So there are some things, or toy, they like to play tug or something, they'll find each other out, but this is kind of why you see some dogs sort of ignore each other, because they go, I know how you play, and I know how you play, we don't sort of play together, and so we're just going to ignore each other, we're fine, we kind of worked it out. So it's best to remember, and I said this before a little bit, but that dogs will generally work it out on their own. And sometimes it's important to let dogs work it out on their own, because our interference can sometimes make things worse. Because they're working it out, they're communicating, they're doing a good job, and then we come along and we don't understand. We come in mid-conversation and say, I have this to add, or I'm going to pull somebody away, and it doesn't let them finish their conversation that they're having, basically. Even if it sounds scary, it may be fine. Again, may not be. But it's sort of hard to say that. A good way to approach this is to take a consent test with the dogs. And so what you can do is, if you have a dog that seems to be unrelenting towards another dog, if the other dog to you appears that they're saying, no, please don't, please leave me alone, stop the other dog. In some cases, if it sounds real scary, there may be some other things going on. But if it looks like another dog is just saying, please leave me alone, and this dog's saying, I want to play, I want to play, I want to play, give the one that's saying, leave me alone, a chance to take a breather. Take the dog who's pushing away and see if the other dog turns around and says, where'd my playmate go? Or if they say, oh my gosh, thank you so much for taking them away, then that's what they needed. So it's a consent test. If they want to keep playing, they will. If they don't want to keep playing, they're going to bail. And then give dogs break time. If it starts to sound really intense, if it starts to sound crazy, and it looks like they've been engaged for a really long time, see if you can distract their attention away. grab some treats, run away, make some noise, wave a toy around, something like that to distract their attention, and then kind of break the dogs up for a little bit, give them a chance to cool off, give them a chance to relax, maybe get some water, and then see if they want to re-engage. Sometimes they just get so wrapped up in what they're doing, they forget to kind of disengage and kind of do their own thing. And then look for a shared play if you want to. If there is chase going on, if there is wrestling going on, somebody may choose to be on the bottom, somebody may choose to be on the top. You want to kind of see some switch of that. We don't want somebody always on the bottom. We don't want to see somebody always being chased. I have heard that there are some exceptions to this. I've not seen a lot of exceptions to this, but it's a good way to kind of gauge that both dogs are having fun, both dogs are enjoying, is especially if the other dog will offer to say, I've been chasing you, do you want to chase me now? They're not just being unrelenting, they're saying, you have a fair chance, you can do it too. And then look for a shake off. Dogs will relieve stress, which builds up by shaking off. It's a full body shake. It starts at their head and it goes all the way through the bottom of their body there. And that is just sort of kind of resetting, getting back to ground zero and saying, okay, I'm in a good place now. Just got to shake it off. I just got to get rid of that. And then, distract the part, grab attention. Okay. All right.
It's running a lecture for you.
I know, seriously. Never done this before. So, stress. Stress is something I just mentioned. And a shake off gets rid of stress, or it's one of the things that can do it. Stress is not always a bad thing. If you are never stressed, the second you did get a little stressed, you would go, what is happening? This is awful. I have no idea what's going on. So a little bit of stress is okay. We just don't want an overabundance of stress. Training is stressful. Learning new things, socializing can be stressful. It doesn't have to be bad. Again, gullible best friend. You're saying this isn't stressful, and they go, okay, I guess it's not stressful, but showing them that feeling is okay sometimes. Yeah, you get the puppy play?
See the adorableness that's going on here with him.
No, that's okay.
It's so cute.
It's so cute.
So welcome.
Finnegan, you're so cute.
It's ridiculous.
Good. All right. So, a shake off is usually a sign that your dog was stressed. Say a big truck goes by and then they have a full body shake off like that. That was stressing out. Shaking off is dealing with it, is coping with it, is learning what to do with that stress, which is really good. They should know how to do that. They need to know how to do that. And other signs to show that your dog is stressed, you'll see a little bit of lip licking. These behaviors usually come together. They're not solely independent of each other. Unprovoked panting. So if you're not doing anything with your dog that would provoke them to be panting, if it's not very hot out, so it's 60 out here maybe, if Hager is panting in this situation and he's just sitting there, then that means he's probably stressed a little bit. Not a lot. There'd be a lot more, and they sort of escalate, they all start to go together. If he's lip licking and panting, and then he starts pacing, especially, that would be another sign of stress. And then vocalization is usually a higher sign of stress. If they're vocalizing, if they're whining, if they're crying, that's usually a good sign that they're stressing out about something. And so you can try to remove them from these situations and slowly reintroduce them to these situations. So take them outside. So say he's stressing out in this situation, whatever it is, I can bring him out to the point where he's not showing these signs again, and slowly work forward. Show him that he's comfortable there. Convince him with food. He's a food motivated dog. Convince him he's comfortable. Move a little closer. Show him that it's okay with food. And I would obviously try to identify why he was stressing out too.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Good job. And then we want to avoid a lot of stress, but you don't have to avoid all stress. Some stress is good. All right. Good. Almost there.
Yeah.
So, arousal. When we speak about arousal in training, we're not talking about sexual arousal. We are talking about basically an increase in stimulus in the environment. So things going on that's just kind of exciting the dog. You feel excited, you feel overwhelmed. It's kind of like that. It starts to go up and up and up and up and up, and then you start to see these behaviors that you wouldn't see otherwise. The dog, or the puppy especially, starts to go kind of crazy. That is a heightened state of arousal. And so usually if your dog is chilling out on the couch, low state of arousal, you throw a ball, they walk after it. Medium state of arousal, You take a ball, you throw it for a really toy-motivated dog. They bolt after it. Their arousal goes way up. They start panting. They start jumping around. They start to exhibit a lot of energy. They look very excited. They seem very excited. This is what arousal is. And so we have to... I usually think of arousal as water on a stove that's heating up in a pot, and so it's going to get hotter and hotter, and you're going to start to see bubbles come up, and then it's going to start to boil, and then usually at some point, especially again with puppies, because they don't have much control of this, it'll just blow over, and that's when you get dogs zooming around the house, and they're mouthing everything, and they're jumping on people, and they're biting. They have no idea what to do with all this energy and all this arousal that they've built up, and so they just go, and they go crazy. And so we want to learn how to control the arousal a little bit. So things that add to arousal is pretty much everything. So it's known stimuli. Somebody comes home, they see their person, and they go, oh my gosh, it's the food person. And so they get really excited. It adds to their arousal, it shoots their arousal up. Unknown stimulus, especially with really young puppies, they're really interested, they're really curious in what's going on. They're going to go, ooh, 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 they're getting really excited about it. Stress can add to arousal. If they're stressing out, it can get kind of arousing and sort of bring that energy level up. And then play and engagement especially is going to get arousal up. You'll start puppies playing with each other, and they'll be kind of low, and then you'll see it escalate. The vocalization will increase, the panting will increase, the play will get more intense. That's a more heightened state of arousal. And so what we want to do is we want to work with our dogs in different states of arousal. Because if we only work with our dogs when they're low, this is usually a thing that is suggested, is work with your dogs when they're tired. That's great, because they're more grounded, they're more susceptible to the training at first when they're tired, so they're not getting distracted by everything, they're not in a heightened state, they're not going, I have to check that out, I have to check that out, it's really interesting. And then if you only work with your dog in a low state of arousal, then your dog is only going to behave in a low state of arousal because that's all they know. So we have to raise their arousal states in order to get them into a higher state and work in a higher state.
Got about 10% battery.
Holy moly. All right. Okay. Well, I am almost done.
Perfect.
Actually, Cody, could you run into my car and grab, there's like a silver block kind of on the floor. Excuse me that it's a giant mess in it. And then pull the iPhone charger from the, it's plugged in there. Yeah.
So it's keep here.
I don't have the cube, no. It should be like on the passenger seat or, in the car. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. Wow, that went really fast.
It went really quick. Yeah.
So leashes, crates, and self-control is the last thing I want to talk about. And puppies that are untrained lack self-control or the ability to resist their impulses. This isn't bad, because usually in those cases it's just, I see food, I want it. They were scavengers. I see food, I'm going to eat it. It makes sense. But we need them to do something else. And so if they are untrained, if we have not taught them anything else, then we need to have some measure of control. So this is what we have to help them control themselves. So things like a leash, I see leashes as a seatbelt to the rest of the world. They live in a world that they cannot understand. We cannot explain what traffic is. We cannot explain why you can't go chase that stuff. They would find out pretty quick. We don't want them to find that out. And then, thank you. And that should plug right in.
Yeah.
And then, as long as this turns on.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now we have like 4 more hours to go. Everybody's good to do 4 more hours. No, last thing. So, leashes are the seatbelt. They don't want to go across the road. They don't want to run after the skunk. I mean, they do want to do that, but we have to show them that they can't do that. We have to keep them safe because they don't know. And these also work in a means of control as a tether. If you have a dog that you're working with, you have them tethered on a leash. So especially puppies, if they're off getting into trouble, they're self-reinforcing their own behaviors. They're creating bad habits that we want to avoid. If you have the end of the leash, we can stop them. If he starts eating something weird, I can pull him away or distract him this way. If I have to chase after him, he may be rewarded in his wanderings. So I want to make sure that he's not. Hey, girl. Over here. Sit up. Good job. So crates are they look like jail cells, kind of. And that's something that I hear a lot. That's I feel like that's our perception that we're putting on these. They don't have to be that. And I think a lot of times what happens is that we feel bad about putting our dogs in crates. And so they catch on to that, and they just see that we're going, oh, I'm really sorry. And they're going, why are you sorry? Why is this bad? I thought it was fine, but now it feels like it's bad because you don't like it. And so we want to make sure that this is a fun, chill place to be. Gullible best friend. Show them it's a cool place to be. Show them it's a good place to be. And so we can give them rewards in here. We can build up the value of the crate. And so they go, oh, this is great. I love this place. It's got my fun stuff in it. I get food in here, and I just get to hang out and sleep. It sounds like a pretty great place to be. So crates are a really good thing, especially with puppies, because you at some point are going to need a break. You want to have some place to just put your puppy where you say, you need to chill, I need to chill, we'll get back together, and then we'll train, and then we'll have fun. But right now, if we continue, I'm going to get frustrated, you're going to get frustrated, and then nobody wins. So crates are a great thing, or some enclosure of some kind. There are exercise pens, which are a little bit bigger, which offer a little bit more room. But if you have a place to put your puppy, they're going to want to go to bed, and you can put them in a place like that and say, good, it's time for bed. Now there are some associations that generally develop with crates, usually association of my owner is leaving, or an association of I'm going to be left in here for a while. This is pattern recognition, which dogs are really good at. And so we want to break those patterns. So we want to use it in times when we're not leaving. We're just going to put them there, and we're going to sit next to them and feed them food, and then we're going to take them out. Or we'll put them in there for 5 minutes, and then we'll take them out. Or we'll put them in there when they're in the same room as us, and then we'll just hang out there for a couple hours and then let them out with a reward. We're breaking the pattern of every time I go in, you're leaving. Every time I go in, I'm going to be bored here alone. If we don't put an excited puppy in a crate, they're not going to think, oh, I'm going to be in here for a while. They're going to go, I'm not tired, and then they're going to fall asleep.
So what do you recommend for those first few nights? Someone brings home 8-week-old puppy, they're freaking out.
Yes.
First time in a crate, what do you do?
So the thing you want to do in this situation, so 7 to 8 week old puppy, there's no way that you can tell them that this is a great place to be. You could try to convince them, but at that age, it's really, really difficult. You can give them rewards when they're in there. You can leave the door open so they're free to come in and out and are rewarded for going in. But at some point, you're going to shut the crate, and they're going to be in there for the night. They're going to cry, and it's going to be awful. So I would say get yourself some earplugs, because that night is the worst. In those situations, what I would do, put the puppy in the crate. If they cry, bring them outside and give them a chance to go to the bathroom in a spot that you have designated that's free of distractions like sticks and things to eat. It's really, you're out here to go to the bathroom. To show them that if they cry, then yes, they get to go out to go to the bathroom, but then bring them right back in and put them in the crate. Crying does not get you out of the crate. Crying can get you out to go to the bathroom. I think that's a fine behavior to say, I'm crying, I have to go to the bathroom. But if you're crying the rest of the time and then you get let out, they're learning reward. If I cry, I get out. The crying is going to get worse every time that they're in there. So leave them in there. They will cry themselves out. It may take all night. It does sometimes take all night. But the first couple of nights are the hardest. And then if they start to learn that that does not get them out, they're going to stop. It's an unreinforced behavior. It will not get them what they want, so it will stop. And as long as you ask for quiet and reward for being in there, then they're going to learn that quiet gets them out. Or when they stop crying, you can open it up, let them out, then quiet rewards them. And so they'll learn that quiet is the behavior that gets them out of the crate, not crying. But the first couple of nights, are going to be awful for most puppies. Yeah, there's no way to sort of get around that. But it is a great way to then also have that as a forced nap. If the crate is small enough, they don't have room to move around, they don't have room to sort of psych themselves up and, get into things. Puppies will go through spikes of energy where they get, I have a ton of energy, and you want to work with them, you want to train them and do enrichment and play with them here, and then they're going to get overtired, and then that's when they hit that sort of toddler state of, if I slow down, I'm going to fall asleep. And so that's when they start going crazy, and they start running around the house, and they start eating everything, and they start jumping on you, and that's when you say, okay, it's time for a nap, and you put them in the crate, and they'll go, I don't want a nap, I don't want a nap. And then the reason that they were doing all that is because they're tired, they'll give up, and they'll fall asleep. It may take a while again. Earplugs, great idea. And yeah, so we can teach them self-control and impulse control. Crates, there are varied opinions on how long you use crates. I would use crates for as long as you possibly can because it's a great place for them to chill. If they don't have a place that's theirs, that is protected from the rest of the house, that is kind of like a den for them, I used to call my dog's crate a den because it made me feel better about it, then they will find something. They'll search it out. They'll go under a coffee table, or I knew a dog who would find a little like nook in the fireplace and they would go hang out in that. They find a den, so we give them a den and we make it a place that they want to be, and it's good. So that it's a great place for them. I lost what I was trying to. Oh yeah. So we do want to teach them self-control. Measures like a leash, especially if you're going to be tethering your dog to you inside the house on a leash. These are temporary measures. We instill control and management as a temporary thing in order to build the behaviors so they can do it themselves. So these are not permanent solutions unless it's like along Route 4 here. I'm not going to do off-leash with my dog anyway. Next to Route 4. Sometimes leashes are necessary because the distractions of the world are too distracting, are too enticing to resist. But we do want to train in situations like the house. I don't want to tether my dog to myself all the time in the house. So I'm going to train him self-control, but if I can't trust him, I'm going to keep him on a leash in those situations. So at least he's not reinforcing behaviors that are going to lead to problems in the future.
Debbie Rutherford says, my daughter's 2 Beagle mixed siblings howl when they're in their crate when nobody's home. They're very loud.
Yes. So, it could be a case that you could help trying to break the pattern. So if they learn that being in the crate means that you're leaving, then it could be a situation where they know you're leaving, they know you're gone, they're kind of working stress up and working that up in themselves. You can give them enrichment to do when you're gone. So something like a frozen Kong is a really great thing to leave in there for a while. Trying to get as much energy out as possible, so they want to spend that time sleeping, but there is sort of some attachment of, you being there and then you not being there and them missing you. There is absolutely that where it could be some separation anxiety, which can be addressed, but it is kind of a different thing than the crate. But wearing them out as much as possible beforehand, using some enrichment techniques to make at least raise the value of the crate, make it a happier place to be, and then also kind of trying to break the pattern of it meaning you're leaving all the time. So put them in, close the door, and then open the door and let them out. Put them in, close the door, leave the room, come back immediately and let them right out. It may help change how they feel about the crate. It may not completely change it, but it may change it more. It may help it. And then if it is separation anxiety or being alone, then that's something that could be addressed in a different way, but we could at least try to change the feeling of the crate. I hope that helps or makes sense.
Yeah, she said they were a year in December, a year old in December.
Okay.
So somebody's probably been going on a little while.
Yeah, so I mean, it may be something that they're used to, and it may be something that you could try to change. You could try to change the meaning of the crate for them and help them in that way. And then if it's a separation sort of anxiety situation, that's something that can be addressed, and that would work at it at a couple different levels. Hopefully it would help it. Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.